Hello and welcome to episode 3 of the Teacher Goals podcast. This is your host, Erica Terry. Super excited about our show tonight. We are going to have a great conversation tonight about how to implement strategies to create a more just and really help our students to become solutionaries that can solve real world problems, community problems. And so we have a great show for you all tonight. And I am super excited. I am always so happy to be with you all. And as you know, I love to know who we have with us tonight. So please say hi and tell me where you're from, what your role is in education. Who do we have in the house with us tonight? And so while I am waiting for you all to share your comments and let me know where you are coming in from, I just want to remind you about the Teacher Goals conference that is going to be happening March 11th and 12th. If you have not already got your ticket, it is absolutely free. So what are you waiting on? Go to teachergoals.com/conference and grab your free ticket today. We have over 30 sessions for you. We have 2 comedy shows, a Friday night comedy show, a Saturday evening comedy show. And so we are super excited about the conference. Want to make sure that you go ahead and grab that ticket right now by going to teachergoals.com/conference. And so with that being said, I see some comments coming up. So I want to see who we have with us. If you haven't already done so, let me know where you're from and what your role is in education. And so let me shout out Chris from Canada, teaches 6th grade English. Welcome. We are so glad to have you. I hope I pronounced this correctly, but Avinash, hello. We are so excited that you're with us all the way from India. So I love that. We have Adrian from Shepherd. We have the man behind Teacher Goals, Brad from Indianapolis, with a ton of snow right now. So if it is snowing in your area, definitely let us know that. Right now, I am in Georgia where we have a little bit of rain, but not anything, no snow or anything. We've been having a couple of nice days. So it feels like spring is on the horizon. We have AP Ma, a teacher from Portugal. Hello, we are happy that you're with us tonight. We have Barbara, who is a triple language master supporting busy executives with transitions, and she is located in Houston. Hello, we have a Floridian, Jessica, and one of our guests tonight is actually in Florida as well. And so I'm pretty sure you all aren't experiencing any snow either. Super excited about that. Robin from Buffalo is a work-based learning teacher with alternative education. So yes, helping with those transitions is so important for all students, but definitely for our students with disabilities. Thank you for joining us tonight. Wanda from Argentina is a 1st grade teacher. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, everyone who I have not been able to pull up. We are so glad that you are here with us. I see a couple of people chimed in from Georgia, like me, Brittany in Augusta, and Keisha from Atlanta. So thank you all for joining us tonight. Just in case this is your first time with us, let me share with you the structure of kind of how it goes. So we have 2 very special guests with us here tonight from the Institute for Humane Education. We have Zoe Weil and Steve Cochrane. And so I'm going to bring them up in a few minutes, and I'm going to be interviewing them and asking them questions while I am interviewing them. If you have a question that comes up, go ahead and put it in the chat right then, because the last part of the interview, after I've asked them all of my questions, then I open it up for you all to ask your questions. And so If you get a question during my interview, go ahead and put it in the chat. Or if you think about it later, go ahead and put it in the chat, because I'm going to start scrolling through when we get close to the end of the interview so that I can ask your questions as well. And so we want to give you an opportunity to ask our guests anything. So every week, we will be here on Thursdays at 7 p.m. And if you join us live, you not only get to enjoy the interview, but you also get your questions answered. And that format will be used at the conference as well. And so, if you love engaging with other educators, then definitely make sure you join us, because we are going to have a good time. And so, with that being said, I am very excited about our conversation tonight. I'm so interested in learning more about the strategies that they teach. And so I am going to go ahead and bring up our guests tonight. So, I hit the wrong button. There we go. All righty. So we have Zoe Weil and Steve Cochrane. Hello. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Erica.
Great to be here. Thank you.
You are so welcome. So glad to have you tonight. And so, for anyone that has been watching and engaging with us for our interviews, my first question is always the same, and it's for you to tell us who you are and what you do. Kind of tell us your story. And so, Steve, since you're in the middle right next to me, I'm gonna start with you. Tell us about who you are.
Well, I am currently in my dream job as executive director of the Institute for Humane Education, but it took me 60 plus years to get to this point. But I'm fundamentally an educator. I've been a college dean and an elementary teacher and an elementary principal, middle school principal, assistant superintendent for curriculum. I actively avoided becoming a superintendent, but I fell into that role in Princeton, New Jersey, where I was a superintendent for about 7 years, retired, and found my way to working with Zoe, who I had known through the years, and could not be happier in that role.
Love it. So many different roles. I'm definitely going to be asking you about the transition that you made, but we'll get to that in a minute. I want to give Zoe an opportunity. I want to give Zoe an opportunity to introduce yourself. Welcome. We're so glad to have you tonight.
Oh, thank you so much, Erica. It's great to be here. And Steve is too humble to tell you that he was superintendent of the year. And so he's in his dream job, and we are so incredibly grateful that this is his dream job.
Yes.
So I'm the co-founder and president of the Institute for Humane Education. And in thinking about what I do, I feel like I need to say why I do what I do.
Oh, I love it.
And I co-founded this organization 25 years ago because I believe in the power of education. I believe that education is the root system underlying all other societal systems. Mm-hmm. And that if we want a world where everybody can thrive, and by everybody, I mean all people, I mean other species and the environment that sustains us, if we want that world, then we need to educate young people so that they have the knowledge and the tools and the motivation to co-create that world. And I'm going to tell one quick story.
Yes.
When I was in college, I was dating a medical student. And one day he said to me that he thought that being a physician was the most noble profession. And I remember feeling really irritated when he said that. And there were a couple reasons I felt irritated. One reason was because I think it's sort of silly to compare professions based on their nobility. But the other reason was that I'd gone to college pre-med and I'd abandoned that career path. So I think I was feeling a little defensive, you too. So his comment has stuck with me all these decades later. And I found myself reflecting upon it And while I still think that it's silly to rate professions based on their nobility, if I were pressed to say what I think is the most noble profession, I would say teaching. And the reason is because there is no other profession that holds the future in its hands. And if the future is to be bright and just and healthy and humane, it's going to be because teachers have given young people what they need to create that world. So that's why I do what I do. And really what we do at the Institute for Humane Education is we help teachers to educate people to be solutionaries, and not just in the classroom, out of the classroom as well, all forms of education. And by solutionaries, we mean people who can identify unjust, unsustainable, and inhumane systems, and then devise solutions that do the most good and the least harm for all people, animals, and the environment.
OMG, you are talking my language. I love it, and can't wait until we get into those specific strategies on how we can educate a generation of solutionaries, as you've just described. Like, that is like the perfect world, right? That's what we're all in here to do, and to help our students to become. So we're definitely going to dive into more about that. But before we do, ever since I've learned that Steve gave up being dean at Princeton to teach elementary students, I just have to hear the story. Like, what happened that made you say, I'm going to leave Princeton and go teach elementary?
Well, I will tell you that story. It was the most important and most naive decision I made in my life. And I've never looked back or ever regretted it. But I had worked at Princeton as an admissions officer and later a dean. I traveled the country telling students that they needed to come to Princeton to get the greatest liberal arts education in the world. I then spent some time up in Boston and going to graduate school, and I had a job as a dorm director at Wheelock College, which trains teachers in early childhood education. And I got to know these young women mostly incredibly well, and I became so just grateful for what they were doing and enamored with the work that they were doing. And I then left my graduate program and started traveling around the country for Wheelock, talking about how important it was to work with young children. Princeton invited me back. I went back as a dean, and it never stopped nagging at me that I was working at the end of the educational process in college instead of at the beginning, and in a rather elite private institution rather than a public one. And so I left. I left to teach 4th and 5th grade in a local school, and I thought naively that it wouldn't be that. How hard can it be? They're 9 and 10. And then, of course, I was completely undone by the simplest things, like, how to collect lunch money or how to line them up. And I realized a few things. One, teaching is the most important profession on the planet, and it is also the hardest.
Yeah.
It's not so hard to be mediocre as a teacher. To be a great teacher is the hardest job in the world, and it has become much harder in the past few years. By all that is happening in our world right now, whether it's the remote learning and the back and forth with masking and in-person learning, whether it's the struggles around what we can teach and what we can't teach about America's complex past and America's complexities currently in the present. It's hard for teachers, and so for those listening, I know I speak for Zoe as well. We just really want to thank you for the work that you are doing, and for the bravery you're showing, and for the courage to stay focused on kids. And we're here to help in any way we can.
Absolutely. I love it. I think we all agree. I know I do. I gave you all types of snaps and claps, like anything that you could give to show that you agree. I agree with everything that you said. Teaching is definitely the hardest profession ever. And we could spend the whole night talking about the changes in the last few years and everything that teachers have had to go through, which is one of the reasons why, just to not, cheap plug, but one of the reasons why for the conference we decided to embed like multiple comedy shows, just so that we can, definitely get those strategies that we need, but also, so we can have some fun and laugh and relax and enjoy one another,
Yeah.
because it's been such a stressful, not just year, but, stressful years for educators at every level. So I definitely agree with everything that you said. And so we're going to jump into more about your book, more about Zoe's book, The World Becomes What You Teach. And in the book, it starts off with three keywords that I found so striking when I got to like the second section. And it said, begin with yourself. So kind of tell me, what steps can educators take to really begin with themselves when it comes to creating this generation of solutionaries?
Thank you, Erica. And I'm so glad there's going to be comedy at the conference. I do improvisational comedy myself, and it's so much fun. And it's really great for educators to be improvisers, because we have to improvise all the time. And it's good to have a sense of humor. So the reason why I talk about beginning with yourself in my book, The World Becomes What We Teach, is because if teachers are going to educate their students to be solutionaries, they need to become solutionaries themselves. They need to understand what that means. And it's not as if schools of education and college programs in education teach future teachers what it means to be a solutionary. And so that's what I mean by beginning with yourself, to go on the journey yourself to become a solutionary. And becoming a solutionary is incredibly rewarding.
Mhm.
Why? Because instead of just feeling overwhelmed by the problems in our world, the problems in our communities, the problems in our country, a solutionary identifies the specific problems that they want to solve, and they go on a journey. And it's a process of doing research and understanding the systems that contribute to that problem, and reaching out to different stakeholders, and then going through a process of finding leverage points to create change and devising solutions. And it's so personally rewarding to really address a problem that you care about, and then to become a solutionary who can solve it, and to work with others to do that. So start with yourself means learn this process. And we have loads of resources to help teachers learn the process. So my book, The World Becomes What We Teach, gives the vision and the practical path forward. But we also offer so much at our website, humaneeducation.org, to help teachers do this. So we have a whole solutionary guidebook that is for educators to educate youth to be solutionaries, their students. And we also have a version for students called How to Be a Solutionary. And we have a solutionary micro-credential program for teachers that is an online asynchronous program, extremely affordable to anybody. And that program allows teachers to go through the process themselves and then create an implementation for their students, and they get coached along the way. So it's asynchronous, but there's an instructor who helps. And so the whole process is meant to be restorative and meaningful to teachers, and then bring this to their students.
Yes, and we will make sure that we include the website in the chat, as well as in the show notes on our website when we post them next week. So if you're interested in that, we're going to make sure that you get access to that website. But with that being said, like, you've shared with us all of, the resources that you have. And so kind of walk us through, an educator that is listening tonight, or maybe listening on a podcast, and they're like, This sounds really interesting. Like, I would love to go through this process. Walk us through, like, what does it look like? What does it mean to educate a generation of solutionaries?
Steve, you or me on this one?
Well, I'll tee it up for you, Zoe. If we think about our children as the next caretakers of our planet, then why would we not want to give them the tools to be able to thrive in that role? And the mission of education now is not elevated enough to focus on that. We focus more on preparing our students for college or career or global competitiveness. But if we, as a society, begin to look 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 100 years into the future, and we think about the problems that we're facing, whether it's in the area of social justice and racial justice, climate change, hunger, disease, animal cruelty, we want to give our students the ability to say, I want tools to solve the problems that I'm seeing in the world. I want to feel that sense of agency and engagement in my learning. And so that's what the solutionary approach does. It gives them those tools to identify inhumane, unjust, unsustainable systems, and then work through a process of determining what's causing those problems systemically, and talking to others about what's working and what's not, what's been tried in the past, looking at different points of view and collaborating with others with different points of view, and then proposing solutions. And solutions, as Zoe indicated, that have sort of the most good for all people, for animals, for the environment. And it's that ethical lens of really looking at the solution that does the most good across those various sectors. That's the key to the solutionary approach. So Zoe, you want to fill in the gaps on that?
Well, I don't know that there were any, Steve. That was great. The one thing I will add is being a solutionary isn't the same thing as being a problem solver. You know, an engineer can be a problem solver. We can do a math problem and solve it, and we're a problem solver. But as Steve just pointed out, being a solutionary has this ethical component of doing the most good and the least harm to all life.
Okay.
And bringing that ethical component to the process means that as students become solutionaries in classrooms, and teachers can incorporate this at all levels, in all subject categories, at all grade levels, in different ways. So it's a very flexible process. There's a 14-step process that's outlined in our free solutionary guidebook that anybody can download. But teachers are going to bring their own work, their grade level and the subject categories. They're going to bring that and infuse this solutionary process into their classroom. And when they do that, they're going to bring this other component, which is really exciting, which is, how do we create solutions that are truly solutionary? And by that, we mean solutions that they're not the same as maybe a humanitarian effort. So let's say you're seeing a lot of trash on the road or on a beach, and you organize a cleanup, and it's community service to do some sort of cleanup. That's a really wonderful thing to do. A food drive for a local food pantry is a really wonderful thing to do. It's not a solutionary thing to do. So we need both. We need humanitarian efforts and we need solutionary efforts. Solutionary efforts would be looking at, why is there all this trash on our beaches and on our roads? Why are there people hungry? And why are there food pantries at all? How can we address the underlying causes that lead to pollution, that lead to climate change, that lead to hunger, that lead to animal cruelty? How can we address those? How can we find the systems and address the real causes and do so in a way that doesn't have unintended negative consequences on any other group? doing that is what's solutionary. And that's pretty exciting. It's exciting for students because those students, we know that students these days are feeling a lot of anxiety, depression levels are rising. Being a solutionary, learning how to be a solutionary is a corrective to all of that. It is so enlivening. It is so exciting. Students come alive. Teachers come alive. The very reason teachers have gone into teaching is suddenly like right before them in their classroom. And it's just so incredibly positive to bring this.
Yes, yes. And it sounds like, I mean, just even the examples that you painted of the difference between being a problem solver, comparing that to being a solutionary is definitely a journey that you have to take. And I'm sure that it requires a mindset shift to go from, okay, let's solve the problem to really looking at the root of the problem, what's causing the problem. And so I say all that because we know that with any mindset shift, with any teaching and implementing a new strategies, a new way of thinking, there are challenges that arise. And so what are some of the challenges that you all have experienced or, coached people as they've gone through and really been, educating their students to become solutionaries? And then what did they do in order to overcome those challenges?
Zoe, do you want to start that?
Sure. I was going to leave it to you because I knew you'd be more eloquent about it, but I'll start and then I'll lob it back to you. We're kind of each other's biggest fan club, if you can't tell. So, right now there's the challenge of no new programs and teachers being overwhelmed because of the pandemic. There's also the challenge that we're seeing in this backlash to teaching about anything that has become at all conflictual, divisive, or polarized in our society. So teachers and administrators are scared to talk about issues and the problems that are leading to these issues becoming divisive in our society. So if teachers are afraid to talk about some of these issues, if they're overwhelmed, if they're overworked, if they're understaffed, that's a challenge to bringing the solutionary framework into their classroom because you have to learn it and you have to feel like you're supported in doing it. And I'll say a couple things about that challenge. Both Steve and I really felt like, as awful as the pandemic has been, it opened a doorway to a new way of thinking about education because we couldn't do it the same way. So we actually perceived this really difficult period of time as presenting an opportunity to think about education differently. And unfortunately, it's been so overwhelming that instead of feeling open to new possibilities, teachers and administrators are rightly feeling so overwhelmed. Like, just please, can we get back to normal? Even though normal may not have been working all that well. So there's that challenge. And then the reality is that the solutionary framework is the best possible answer to the divisiveness and the polarization that we are seeing in our society and that's coming up in schools. Because the whole solutionary process invites us to collaboratively work to address problems that we care about in ways where we're talking to all stakeholders. It is the opposite of fighting. It's the opposite of either or thinking. It's the opposite of side taking. It's saying, let's see where we can agree that there's a problem and let's work together and learn from everybody so we can solve it. And I think that as soon as teachers and administrators realize this, and they can say to the parents who have been very vocal of late, we have a response that's going to help all of us, that's going to build our communities, that's going to really meet the challenges that we face, I think parents will be excited about it, because this isn't a left, right, or red state, blue state, or conservative, progressive dichotomy. This is solutionary thinking and action. And bringing a solutionary mindset means believing that problems can be solved, that we can take on different perspectives, that we can see different points of view, and that we can work together.
Love, love, love it. And so if people want to learn more about you all, where can they find you? Both of you answer. And then, of course, I know we've had the website in the chat, so I'll make sure I add that as well.
Steve?
Well, where they can find us is at our website, humaneeducation.org. And once there, we would encourage people to look for the button that is sort of resources for educators. And you'll find the guidebook for yourself and for students that you can download for free. There's also another page for those who might be interested in our graduate program. And so you can learn more about humane education and the master's degrees that we offer, master's in teaching. And the solutionary micro-credentialing program is also under that resource page for teachers.
Love it. And any social media handles?
Oh, lots of those. And I'll just add to what Steve said. In terms of our graduate programs, they're online. They're through an affiliation with Antioch University. We also have a doctoral program with a specialization in humane education, in addition to the Master of Education. So we have a lot of different offerings and so many places where teachers can find what they're looking for, from free resources to a short micro-credential program to, free guidebooks and all the rest. So we're on Facebook at Institute for Humane Education. We're on Twitter at Humane Education. We are on Instagram at Humane Education. We have a fantastic curated Pinterest board, Institute for Humane Education. We're on LinkedIn. So find us everywhere.
Yes, love, love, love.
And we're also, I'm going to give a little pre-commercial message that we are preparing a resource for teachers that will include sample units that have been used in San Mateo, California, where all the school districts in that county are steeped in the solutionary philosophy. Oceanside, New York, Maine, Colorado, we have classrooms there. So we've gathered and curated sample units that teachers can apply in different settings. Provided some essential understandings about the solutionary process, and we're developing a planning tool that will walk teachers through each of the 14 steps with suggested activities for K through 2, 3 through 5, and 6 through 12. So that is something we're hoping to get up within the next month or so.
Well, we will definitely be looking for it. And I just want to thank you all for joining us tonight. For those of you that have truly enjoyed this conversation, I just have to let you know that Zoe will be with us at the conference. She is one of our featured speakers. And so she'll be sharing a lot more information and tools and resources about teaching students to become solutionaries. So thank you so much for joining us tonight. It was great.
Such a pleasure, Erica. Thank you.
Thank you, Erica, and thank all those who are tuning in tonight.
And thank you, teachers.
Yes, for all that you do. We appreciate you more than words could express. So we thank you guys. And so, as I explained at the beginning, it is time for Q&A. If you have any questions, go ahead and put them in the chat. I will be looking for those. And also to let you know, we are going to have a giveaway at the very end. We are going to be giving away a copy of the book that we've been talking about all night. What you teach, or the world becomes what you teach. So we want to make sure that you stay on to the end, because we will be giving away a copy of the book tonight. And so I'm going to go ahead and look at the comments. And so just to let you guys see, like we have been having some great feedback throughout this entire interview. So Lovely says, solutionary teaching, great to hear this method. A lot of people were chiming in as you all were describing, like the different problems that can be described. And so, so inspiring. Just some really great feedback. And people were definitely chiming in as we were talking about just all the greatness that educators and teachers do. So thank you guys for that. Claudia says, yes. This was so amazing and and inspiring. And she says, I stand Steve and Zoe. So look at that. You got some fans tonight. I love it. Maria said, amazing. And B says, great information. Rosalind has some hearts, as well as Queenie and Carla. So you all are just getting so much love in this in these comments. Diana, great information. Thanks. We have Chris. Thank you. So inspiring. Karen says that this is so needed in the current climate. We need solutionaries, and that is so true. And so for people that are feeling that way, it just made me think of another question. Like, we need solutionaries. Like, what is just something, a small action that we can take to start this work, like within ourselves, or sharing it with people that we know?
Well, there are a couple questions that we can ask ourselves in the process of becoming a solutionary. And this is for anybody, adults, for young people. And the first question is, what problems do I want to solve? What issues do I care about? The next question is, what am I good at? And the third question is, what do I love to do? Now, we don't know all the things that we're good at. Certainly young people don't know all the things that we're good at. I'm 60 years old. I don't know yet all the things I'm good at. I hope I find out that I'm good at many other things I don't know about. But we know some of the things that we're good at. And for young people to be able to ask themselves what they're good at beyond what is graded and judged in school. Like, maybe they're a really good listener and a good friend. Maybe they're a good researcher. Maybe they're good at finding out information. Maybe they're good musicians. Maybe they're good dancers. There's so many things that we can be good at. And then we ask what we love to do. And again, we don't know all the things we love to do until we've tried them. But when we can find the ways where what we love to do and what we are good at is in service to solving a problem that we care about, well, that is so incredibly powerful, and our lives are made more meaningful and joyful when that happens. And anybody can ask themselves those three questions. There is a fourth question too, which is, after you've answered those first three, is, what do I need to learn? Because then you can go on that path in order to really, I like to say that it makes your life golden when you find the answers to those questions and you get to live your life in service to what you really care about.
I love it. Living life like it's golden. Love it. So Jessica says, wondering if you had one actionable thing we could put on our to-do list as we see students tomorrow, what would it be? Great question.
I love that question, Jessica.
Me
Thank
too.
you for that. You can begin, the solutionary process is like a story arc. And it starts off with sort of learning about issues in the world, and then seeing problems, and then exploring what is the source of that problem, and realizing that it's connected to larger systems, and uncovering more issues, and there's sort of a climax that rises, and then kids become a character in their own story as they figure out what the solution might be, and they join with others in doing that, and then there's sort of a resolution to all of this. So the beginning stage might be, and so you can join in, just asking students, what are the problems that they care about?
Mhm.
What ultimately what I would love to see as an educator is students coming to school not asking what career do I want to have, but what problem do I want to solve? And so beginning to get students to look at their, it could be the world, it could be their community, it could be their school, it could be their classroom, but what are they seeing that they may want to solve? And then figuring out what's causing that problem and joining with others and maybe figuring out a solution. And it's okay to start small. It's okay to start in the classroom or in the school and then learn the process and move out.
Yeah.
But schools should be places of joy and purpose. They should be joy and purpose for our teachers in what you're doing, and they should be a place of joy and purpose for our kids. And so whatever you can do just to make those students feel safe in your classroom and welcome and joyful and compassionate for others, that's the first step.
I love that.
And before you jump in, just kind of add, because you started getting into Terry's question, as you talked about like a joyful environment, safe. And so she asked, do you see the learning environments changing as we support our students to find what they're good at? So Zoe, as you add to it, can you kind of just touch on the actual learning environment and how it will shift when you begin to educate students to be solutionaries?
Yes. So I love everything Steve said. And I want to tell a story that I think is really important. And Terry, I hope this leads to answering your question. So 7 years ago, I was invited to speak at a middle school. And I asked the students what they thought were the biggest problems in the world. And I started with the 4th and 5th graders. They filled up a whiteboard with problems, filled it up. And it was the same list of problems that adults would have filled that whiteboard up with. And then I asked them to raise their hands if they could imagine us solving the problems that they had listed. And of the 45 children in that room, only 5 raised their hands. Only 5 could even imagine that we could solve the problems that they listed. And that was probably the most distressing moment in my many decades as an educator. I thought, if these children can't even imagine us solving these problems, what would motivate them to try? So I stopped what I was doing and I did a guided visualization with them. And I asked them to close their eyes and imagine that they were very old at the end of a very long and well-lived life. And the world was really different by the end of their life. The air was clean and species had rebounded from the brink of extinction. And there hadn't been a war in decades and nobody went to bed hungry because they had no choice. So I painted this very vivid picture of a world where everybody can thrive. And then I asked them to imagine a child coming up and joining them, sitting on a park bench on a beautiful day and asking about what had changed and how things had changed because they'd been studying history in school. And then I asked the children with their eyes closed this question: what do you want to be able to tell that child that you did? How will you answer that child's question when the child says, what did you do to help bring about this better world? So while they still had their eyes closed, I asked them to raise their hands if now they could imagine us solving the problems they'd listed on the whiteboard. And the ratio completely reversed. 40 hands went up in the air. So what that made me realize, and this answers the previous question about like, what's the first thing I can do tomorrow? It's to make sure that your students know that a just, humane, sustainable, compassionate, beautiful, thriving world is possible. Because it is possible. So much in my own lifetime has changed for the better. I know we're facing climate change. I know we're in the middle of a pandemic. I know there's so much inequity. And yet, when I was born, 50% of the people in the world were living in extreme poverty. Now that percentage is below 10%, way too high, and we have to solve it. but it's not 50% anymore. When I was born, it was illegal in the United States, in many states, for Black and white people to get married when I was born. And so when we think about the positive things that have changed, we have to convey that to young people. And so to answer that previous question, when you create that space of evidence-based hope, not as Steve would say, lollipops and rainbows, but evidence-based hope, then young people are engaged in this process where what Steve just described as the joy that should infuse our schools can truly infuse our schools.
I love it. And Susan says this is great, even for non-school environments. We should all learn to be solutionaries.
Yes.
And so I love that. Love that.
And people will find that at our website as well. We have a section in our menu, Become a Solutionary, and it has how to be a solutionary guidebook, and it has the steps to that process.
I love it. And so I am going to leave you guys with a couple of things. First of all, this comment, I loved it. Rosalind said, yes, our kids need the tools to become the future global leaders and peace agents. I'm going to try that on Monday. Very insightful and engaging tool. So I love that our educators, our teachers on here have been inspired to take action. And so this has been a great conversation. There was one more question that I wanted us to tap in, because this is our winner for tonight. The book that we're giving away. Steve, can you hold it up for us? Our winner tonight, she will get a copy of The World Becomes What We Teach. And she asked one more question that I absolutely loved. And we're going to end with this question tonight. Any advice on how to involve our communities beyond our classrooms in this work? And I thought this question was so striking, because here at TeacherGoals, if you're in the Facebook group, you may have noticed it's called Connected School Communities, because we truly believe in connecting the school and the community together in order to, create all of these lifelong learners, everything we talk about. And so how can we do that with this work? How can we involve our communities?
Well, I'll jump in with this one, because the solutionary process itself requires that. Yeah. So the solutionary process, in one of the steps, is to have the students learn from others in the community. And so there is no division. The students are going to be reaching out into the community. Community members are going to be part of helping those students become solutionaries. And that means everybody gets to work together.
And ultimately, this is education in action. So one of the final steps is the implementation into the community of whatever problem the students were looking to solve. So whether it's going to their school board and advocating for something, or going to the local shelter, or the municipal government, students are looking to take action to solve real problems right there in the community. So as Zoe said, it's integral to the process.
Absolutely love it. This has been so inspiring. I mean, just from looking at the comments, everyone agrees. Terry says, thank you. So insightful. We have amazing, some hand claps. Love it. And so I just want to thank you all for joining me. This has been so inspiring and such a great conversation. Thank you all for joining us tonight. Congratulations, Jessica, on winning tonight's giveaway, which is a copy of the book. For those of you that have not already gotten your ticket to the TeacherGoals conference, make sure you go ahead and do that right now. Zoe will be there as a featured speaker. We're going to have some comedy shows, a whole lot of fun, laughter, and learning. And so definitely join us March 11th and 12th. It is absolutely free. You can attend the entire 2-day live event absolutely free. And you can get that ticket by going to teachergoals.com/conference. And as you are doing that, I am going to end tonight by just kind of showing you a video of what we have coming up. We will be here every Thursday at 7 p.m. And so we have some great guests lined up. I'm going to show you a video of the guests that we've had previously. And so if you want to catch those interviews, they're right on our page that you're on right now. And we have some other great guests coming up. So every Thursday night, meet us here. We'll be back. I'll be interviewing wonderful educators that are definitely making a splash. And so thank you guys for joining us tonight, and I will see you next week. All right. Good night, everyone. Thank you
so much, Erica.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.